It is hard to imagine someone who does not enjoy the pleasures brought about by spring and summer sunshine. And yet the millions of hay fever sufferers dread the coming of the warm season, when the sunny spells fill the air with loads and loads of tiny pollen grains. Pollen is their invisible but fearsome enemy, which invades their nose with every breath, bringing dreaded symptoms: blocked nose, sneezing, itching, watery nose and eyes, tiredness and low energy, and for some, much more. Hay fever may seem a minor problem, but in fact it's like having a cold all summer long. Many hay fever sufferers wonder what is happening in their nose and how their symptoms occur. To understand what goes wrong, one has to know how the nose works normally. The nose, as small as it looks, is in fact a vital organ. It is the guardian of the lung. It filters, warms and humidifies between 10 and 20,000 litres of air every day, preparing it for contact with the more sensitive linings of the lungs. Besides conditioning the air, the nose can also identify many aggressors present in it, such as irritants, bacteria or viruses, and alert the local branch of the immune system, which can then initiate a defence reaction. So how can the nose fulfill all these tasks? To start with, in the entrance of the two nasal passages, the skin is covered by tiny hairs. These hairs trap large particles suspended in the inspired air. So when we breathe in through the nose, only small particles can penetrate deeper inside. Further up the two nasal passages, the skin is replaced by a lining which looks very similar to that of the mouth. This lining helps with other functions, particularly warming, humidifying and defending. The nasal lining contains two types of cells: epithelial cells, which have small hair-like projections on their surface, called cilia, which beat towards the back of the nose. Scattered amongst these are mucus-producing cells. The mucus they secrete covers the nasal lining with a fine layer of sticky liquid, which traps particles such as dirt, pollen, bacteria, etc., suspended in the inspired air. Through the movement of the cilia, mucus and the particles trapped within it are cleared backwards into the throat and swallowed. This prevents them reaching the lungs. Underneath the nasal lining there is another layer called the submucosa, which contains the blood vessels, nerve endings and immune cells. There are many types of immune cells, but for allergy two are important: mast cells, which are normally present in the submucosa but increase in number in allergy, and eosinophils. Eosinophils are a type of white blood cell normally found in the blood. However, in infections or allergy, they leave the blood and take up residence in the submucosa. Similar to other immune cells, mast cells and eosinophils are armed with chemicals that help them fight microbes. These chemicals are stored in tiny granules inside the cells and are released whenever there is an infectious attack. Lastly, you need to know a little about the sinuses. These are 4 pairs of hollow spaces nested inside the bones of the head. You can see 2 of them in this picture: the frontal sinuses and the maxillary sinuses. The other 2 pairs are hidden deeper inside the skull bones. All sinuses open into the nasal passages through minute openings, which are also coated with a lining similar and continuous with that of the nose. Due to this close relationship and communication, when the nose is ill, such as when you have a cold or have hay fever, the sinuses can also be affected. So now you know how the nose works normally. Let us see what goes wrong when it is invaded by pollen. Let us imagine a bright, sunny summer day in the fields. The sun is high and hot, and the grasses fill the air with billions of invisible pollen grains. Every time you breathe in, pollen lands on the lining of your nose. Then some grains make their way towards the submucosa. For most of us, this has no consequence, as pollen is truly harmless, but some people have an overactive immune system which sees dangers even though they are not there. So in these people, whenever pollen grains enter the nose, the immune system reacts. Mast cells and eosinophils fire their chemicals, trying to stop the pollen invasion. But they are fighting a virtual enemy, so the only thing that gets hurt is the nose. The symptoms caused by this attack are quite similar to those of a cold, only that usually they last longer. Mucus cells start releasing high amounts of mucus to make the nasal lining slippery and prevent the invader attaching to it. When there is an infection, this is a good idea, but in hay fever the only consequence is a constant dripping of the nose and watery eyes. The chemicals released from mast cells and eosinophils also tickle the nerves in the nose. This causes itching and sneezing. At the same time, the nerves amplify the danger signals by releasing their own messengers in the vicinity of the blood vessels. This causes the blood vessels to enlarge many times bigger than normal, forming large sacs of blood. When this happens, the submucosa swells like a sponge, pushing the nasal lining up. This narrows the nasal passages and limits the airflow through them, making you feel that breathing through the nose is difficult. Sometimes the nasal passages are so narrowed that the nose feels completely blocked. Hay fever sufferers say that sometimes they get symptoms when breathing in tobacco smoke, fumes, strong perfumes, cold air, or other irritant substances, and wonder if they have become allergic to them. The answer is no. These substances irritate the nerves and would cause a mild reaction even in healthy people. But in hay fever, the nerves are already so alert that they need only small amounts of an irritant to become even twitchier and fire danger signals. Whenever this happens, symptoms like sneezing, itching, and nasal blockage get worse. So now it's easy to understand how pollen causes all the unpleasant symptoms of hay fever. But very often, hay fever causes trouble beyond the nose. When the nose is blocked, the swelling of the nasal lining narrows to restrict or even close the tiny communications with the sinuses. Therefore, the mucus produced inside the sinuses cannot drain out. The sinuses fill up and the pressure inside increases, causing pain in the bones of the head. This can be everything from a very strong and acute headache to just a mild feeling of heaviness. Sometimes the mucus inside the sinuses becomes infected. Then the pain gets worse, the person can get fever, lose their sense of smell, and get unpleasant taste in the mouth. And it's not only the sinuses that suffer in hay fever, the lungs can suffer too. Many people know that after their hay fever starts, it's just a matter of time until they also get asthma attacks. The nose is the guardian of the lungs. A healthy nose is the prerequisite of healthy lungs. If the nose is blocked, we automatically switch to mouth breathing, and the pollen, which is normally trapped by the nose, is able to get directly into the lungs. There it causes changes similar to those in the nose, swelling of the lining, mucus production, etc., making the tubes in the lung narrow and prompting asthma attacks. Our journey into the universe of hay fever has now come to an end. We hope that this movie has taught you something about your disease and will help you to cope with it more easily. Before saying goodbye, here are some little tricks that might help you. If you want to keep your symptoms low, start your hay fever treatment 1 to 2 weeks before the pollen season begins. This means mid-February if you are allergic to tree pollen, or mid-April if you are allergic to grasses. Talk to your doctor about this approach. Also, hay fever is not a cold. You will get symptoms continuously for as long as the air is filled with pollen. Therefore, if you want to be spared from the bad symptoms all pollen season, take the treatment for the whole of the season. And take it every day, even when you feel well. It's the treatment that makes you feel so good. And remember, taking good care of your nose will not only help with your hay fever symptoms, but it will also keep your sinuses and lungs healthy.